これからディオが下にあるわしの体に何をしようと、決して逆上して冷静さを失ってはいけないぞ、ジョータロウ。わしのことはもう気にするな。なるべくしてなったことなんじゃ。ジョータロウ、この旅行は実に楽しかったな。いろんなことがあった。まったく本当に楽しかった50日間じゃったよ。
There was a quote along the lines of, "The best achievements are born of the greatest sacrifice." Such a beautiful quote. But you know, if you just do a lot of legal stuff, it just removes the need of sacrifice completely. I'm just like one of those people. Oh, sorry. Immersion. Right. My bad. Sacrifice and the courage to make decisions that others would never is a known Joseph Joestar trait. His confidence has always been a dominant attribute for what people know him for, but that's what usually puts his other notable attributes to the side. The biggest thing that I had going for Joseph was his development over time. From the beginning to the end of Battle Tendency, it's two different Josephs, but when comparing to the beginning of Part 2 Joseph to Part 3 or the end of Part 3 Joseph, you wouldn't even be able to tell if it was the same person. While some say that he's possibly missing the flair from his youth, well, he's matured, and personally, I still believe that he's got it. Joseph Joestar was originally a kid who lived in a world where the only people that truly matter are family. Some say it's a selfish life, but is it really when everyone carries different weight like that? While he was like that at an even younger age than he was primarily in Battle Tendency, he grew past that mindset, unintentionally. We had learned about that in the fight between him and Straits, or Straits though, it really doesn't matter. The fight was an introduction to the fate of having an obligation towards justice, but it was also a wake-up call in general for Joseph. His life was bound to the fate of being someone who fights for the world, and protecting the young lady was the first step of it all. With how that had fight gone, you noticed that he hadn't shown any signs of his character cracking until another life was in danger, or he was truly angry. Originally, it was Joseph unleashing his wrath on Straits for potentially killing Speedwagon, and that was signified by tears of anger and accomplishment. And a side note to what that is, tears after defeating someone who you originally thought of was close family, that's interesting and a nice little callback to Jonathan and Phantom Blood. But on Joseph, he had kept composure well against Straitso, and that's usually where a lot of his power comes from. That's where a majority of Joseph's wins come from, a kept composure and a well enough mentality to think out how to get the win, but there's times to where his composure shows cracks in it, those specific cracks being forms of wrath and anger. It's great to draw from that, but to continuously draw from your anger and wrath wouldn't do you well enough when there's higher stakes at hand. Imagine all of the times to where Joseph had pushed his luck or thought he was ahead of the game. There was the first interaction between him and Wamu, him against Cars after Lisa lost her first and only fight in Part 2, and we mentioned the earlier fight between him and Straitso. You could possibly count the fight between him and AC/DC, but that was such a questionable fight in general for me. These fights where Joseph's emotions got the best of him, and it didn't help contribute, but the problems are usually solved through other means. It's a lesson Joseph knows well, and would probably do well with passing it down. That's for keeping your spirit at its strongest, but what about the other side of it? Joseph's sacrifice throughout his lifespan would continuously grow stronger for what it was in whichever respective part it's going in. In Part 2, Joseph sacrifices the life he knew well to be one of the few Hamon warriors fated to stop the Pillarmen. At the end of it, he was going to legitimately sacrifice his life to stop Ultimate Cars. All that built up in that part for it to end on that note was going to be insane. But even with it being faked, it could have been pulled off well and made sense for what had happened. But, you know, we didn't lose him. Also, before I go on into Part 3, I know I'm going to get a comment or two on Caesar's sacrifice here. So what makes sense and what's great to mention is that it was assigned to Joseph that some might have to die for a better cause. But in terms of contribution, I wouldn't be able to tell you what had happened. Joseph got a sign and bandana, but Wamu had looked perfectly fine for the most part, so the damage of all of it kinda went in vain. It was just more so the action of it, and it did more for Joseph than Caesar, really. especially since he's only had about 2 notable moments for his character for the short lifespan that we knew him for. Now for his spirit and sacrifice in part 3. With the growing connections between all of the characters we see in Stardust Crusaders, I would say it's difficult to hate anyone in the group, but I would say it's especially hard to dislike the characters that bring the most energy to it, those being Polnareff and Joseph. Now, speaking on terms of a leader, even with Kakyoin being the most reliable and primary source of knowledge and guidance, Joseph was an amazing leader for the group. It wasn't just because the ability to keep the direction intact or something along the lines of keeping everyone in line. The Stardust Crusaders is a group of individuals sharing the same goal, and while Joseph was the leader, he wasn't trying to be too much like one, just more so being the person that you want to go to. The group itself was a place where the members have energy to bounce off of one another to give us the best interactions and enjoyment of the part, Joseph just being the man who's behind it all and being the one who organized it. With a comparison to his original self, you notice that the idea of giving Joseph a group would sound completely out of the ordinary for who he was, especially since he does his best work solo. But he's matured, and he grew to a point where doing stuff single-handedly isn't as easy as it used to be, but, you know, he's still got it from time to time.
He's in, boys! He did it! He said it!
Such a lively character and a necessary part of the group, and well, now there's the sacrifice area of it. I'm gonna be honest with you, in terms of sad moments in the anime, this was probably going to be top 3 for me. Though I think Okuyasu and his last moment with his brother in spirit form probably beats it all for me. The death of Joseph in Stardust Crusaders was extremely painful for what it was and what he said fading away. It sounded like the real deal, and with him giving Jotaro the lesson on anger management, it was something that I felt solidified his end. His character had truly come full circle, and it felt like the end of it all. It also didn't help that we just lost Kakyoin after coming off of the loss of both Avdol and Iggy, so this had me just sitting down watching the part hoping that they just don't go ahead and completely end Joseph, or Polnareff. I probably would have lost my mind if that was the case. But when it did happen, with Joseph, it was fine. Joseph said it best. He did what he had to do. Though the thing with sacrifice, with enough of it, you're bound to get some sort of benefit in the future. For Joseph, he got another chance at life. And while the journey was over in the end of it all, his journey wasn't. Joseph and now the maturing Jotaro had continued their personal journeys of tying up any loose ends and attempting to save whatever world we had left. And that's where we go on into Diamond is Unbreakable. In part 4, Joseph doesn't have as much of a strong role for the whole part itself, but he had a massive role for Josuke in specific. With his absence in age, Josuke had not that much of a reason to listen to Joseph on anything really, and it didn't help that Joseph was reasonably senile. He knew that Josuke didn't have that much of a reason to listen, so instead, he let his actions do the talking. He was able to trust Joseph a lot more for his ability of being able to take care of Shizuka and also thinking outside the box to do what he did to save her too. When Joseph had done that thing with the blood in the water, Josuke saw a lot in him. Josuke originally couldn't see past Joseph's old self, but after that situation, he was able to see a street smart man that knows dire situations the best. And with how much Josuke learns over part 4 to use it all in the fight with Kira, I'm pretty sure that this scene had actually helped contribute with the whole bloodbending thing he had going on. Possibly, I'm not sure. Joseph Joestar was originally a headstrong kid with no real sense of direction that only followed himself, and he lived for no one else besides his loved ones. By comparing that with his older self and the last time we had seen him, he completely contrasts what he was originally about. It's a reasonably strong development, and one of the reasons why I will always like old Joseph over young Joseph. But whether he's young or old, sensible or senile, one thing will never change. George Joestar has never had a legitimate part or OVA, and probably never will. You know why? Because we live in a fucking society. Thank you all for watching. You know the same old media in the description and all of that. Rest in peace, Mr. Ishizuka, phenomenal voice actor and would always play his part with so much power. The real reason why I actually even made this video, honestly, especially since I had this video planned for the further away future, and it's so crazy. He had done so many characters. He done Professor Oak, Hohenheim in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Mr. Satan, Zabuza, Borsellino, and it was insane to me, especially since Pokemon is such a humongous thing to me growing up, and there was a time and area where Pokemon just like legitimately stopped airing and I would just have to watch it online, and I watched it in sub, and there was Hohenheim too, and obviously I watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood in sub too, and even Dragon Ball Z, it's Naruto, it's legitimately crazy. But you know, rest in peace. Great voice actor, and possibly, I don't know, I might do another character, just something circulate around this, but actually next video is probably going to be Hunter based. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, peace out and Godspeed.